Welcome to Focus Today. I'm your host, Perry Atkinson, and what a delight to have with us Meeke Addison. She's the Director of Communication for Urban Family Talk, a division of American Family Association. One of my favorite guests to have on Focus Today. We have a lot to talk to her about. But hi, Meeke, how you doing, friend?
Oh, I'm doing well. It's so great to be with you. Always great to have an opportunity to visit with you, Perry. How are you?
Oh, doing good. Doing good. Looking forward to our time together today. Hey, I want to start with... First of all, as you know, there was a vote due in the House of Representatives today, but it got delayed to defund Planned Parenthood, which is kind of ironic when they funded it several weeks before. Your comments on this hypocrisy?
Yeah, I mean, I think you just nailed it. Even in discussing it, the truth is that we elect politicians who kind of forget about their promises once they head to Washington. We've got a lot of show votes, and we sort of have paper tigers there, you know, and sort of these could be giants, but as you know, they are asleep and really not in touch with what people really want. You know, this is just sort of, I think, reflective of a bigger problem that we have people who are cowards, and we see that reflected in various facets of our daily living. Certainly it's reflected in Congress. It's not surprising. You know, the American people are fed up, which, you know, kind of speaks a lot to what we see happening in politics today. Enough is enough. It's not surprising, although it should be.
What's interesting about this vote, 150 Republicans voted for it, and that is, I'm talking about the funding bill initially that gave Planned Parenthood a year's funding through the term of the president, and 95 voted against it. When I saw that, I thought, well, wait a minute. Those who are true pro-life people had plenty of room to vote against this bill, and they still didn't do it.
Yeah, you know, I don't know that the complaints and the outrage is really registering. I don't know if we just seem to be sort of these, you know, these kooky people who are at home in, you know, in their districts, you know, that they forget that they're supposed to be representing. But again, we just have an incredible amount of cowardice. Now, that doesn't mean that we're not supposed to be vigilant. That doesn't mean that we're supposed to kind of flippantly treat the power of the vote. We're supposed to be very careful and prayerful when we are electing these officials who represent us. At the same time, though, it's really important for us to contact our representatives. It's important for them to hear our voices and to hear our outrage, because, you know, the fact of the matter is, a lot of times when they leave their districts and leave the towns that elect them, they kind of are insulated from the true, I guess, the degree of outrage that they need to hear to really affect some change. The way to alleviate that is to contact your elected officials when these opportunities arise, and when there's a call to action. Your voice really does matter, and that might sound a little trite, but really your voice matters, and they're not able to outrun you just because they go to Washington. You can call and contact and voice your concern, and we need to see more of that, so we see the kind of pressure put on these elected officials that really they've been kind of able to kind of outrun.
All right, let's swing over to Roe versus Wade. Meeke, as you know, last Friday was the 43rd anniversary. We're looking at 50, some will say as high as 64 million babies never saw the light of day as a result of Roe versus Wade 43 years ago. And then we saw the horrifying videos coming out, what goes on in Planned Parenthood, and yet Congress still funded it. Have we grown immune to this, or is this... How do we bring this back? Because I truly believe this. If we want to correct America, we want to help America, we want to turn America around, I clearly believe that it hinges on us getting the abortion issue correct.
You know, we are probably chest deep in the blood of innocent babies in this country. And, you know, I was thinking this morning, even in anticipation of our visit, I was thinking, you know, we often go back to Roe versus Wade when murder in this country became legal, you know, and we say 57, and again, some reports as high as 64 million innocent babies murdered. And I was thinking this morning, you know, we could in this country go back before then, and that number would be much higher. So this has been an incredible indictment on our country, on its residents. But here, I want to say this. The bigger issue has been the failure of the church. Now, we can talk about Congress and we can talk about what laws are not being passed, but there's a new fight that we have to fight when we talk about defending life. And it's a cultural fight. You know, there's a new information out from the president of CareNet, which is the largest evangelical network of crisis pregnancy centers, a man by the name of Roland Warren. And he said something in addressing evangelicals for life over the weekend. And I found this information absolutely startling. 4 in 10 women who reported having an abortion for the first time also said that they attend church more than monthly. So they attend church on a fairly regular basis. These are the women who are having abortions. These are the women who are paying for these abortions. And he said something that I thought was, provocative. But when you take a step back and you look at it, it's true. He said, we're pushing to defund Planned Parenthood. We're pushing to stop the money trickling into this abortion mill, right? But at the same time, he said, if those who profess to be Christ followers would simply teach the truth, teach the word of God in their churches, he said we could begin to defund Planned Parenthood simply by Christian women not having abortions. He said to the tune of $100 million when you start looking at the money and how it all breaks down. And so really, yes, we have our nation funding the slaughter of innocent babies, but what should be more disturbing to us is that we have the people of God, those who have professed to be followers of Christ, still destroying their babies in utero. That I don't know how you move past that.
Wow. You open up a big discussion here. What has happened within the church that this would be considered as an option? In other words, if they're sitting in church 1 or 2 times a month, if they're anyway tuned into the argument, they would know that abortion is murder. So what has happened inside the American church that would allow a woman to consider this as an option?
Wow, what a great question. Here is what I believe, okay? I really believe that the enemy has infiltrated the church. And the deception is that whenever an issue becomes political, it is no longer moral. Meaning we're not talking about morality here. We're talking about politics. And so the two shall not twine. Like we are not going to deal with, politics in the church. We've got to protect our nonprofit status and all of these things. And so that great deception has led to almost sort of this scared, stiff approach to dealing with abortion in the church. So you have pastors who simply won't deal with it. And not to branch too far off, but I would say that the issue of homosexuality also falls in line here. Whenever an issue becomes political, somehow we kid ourselves and we say it's no longer a question of morality. That just isn't true. The Bible has an awful lot to say about the sanctity and the value of human life. And so just because our culture tends to adopt sin, which that's what you expect a culture void of God to do, it doesn't mean that the church is supposed to follow lockstep and adopt that as well. So frankly, pastors just don't address it, Perry, and they don't address it because they say, well, we're not supposed to get involved in politics. This is not a political issue. We are talking about something that is as black and white as life and death. And you've got, as you say, women who are in church on a regular basis, hearing all types of sermons, but there are obviously passages that are being skipped over in the Bible because these same women are still leaving these churches. And think about this for a moment. I would like to say this to the body of Christ. If you have a woman in your congregation who is pregnant and is abortion minded and she's still attending, don't you think that she is there hoping and praying for an opportunity to hear something that will change her mind and change her heart? And the great indictment is that she goes to church and sits for 30 or 45 minutes and doesn't hear anything that convicts her or pricks her heart, that beckons her to spare the life of her baby. This should be appalling to every believer.
Beautifully said. Beautifully said. Because some ways, by avoiding what they perceive to be political, they themselves are being political by saying nothing.
That's right. Yes.
All right. Let me take a break here, Meeke. When we come back, I want you to explain to us, because it appears that the abortion industry has targeted the African-American community as well as the Hispanic community. We've heard some of these numbers, but maybe you can help us get our heart and head around it when we come back. We'll be right back with Meeke in just a moment. And by the way, you can go to afa.net. This is an incredible organization that's doing all the right things. Go to their website. It's a great resource, and support them. afa.net. We'll be right back.
I'm Paulina Leiser, producer of Focus Today. Thank you for watching this video, and make sure to check our other videos at theDove.us.
Okay, we're back with Meeke Addison. She is the Communications Director for Urban Family Talk, which is a division of the American Family Association. AFA.net is their website, and we're talking about Roe versus Wade. Meeke, 43 years later, part of this argument that few would recognize or even admit, but I think some of those videos did point out that Planned Parenthood was literally targeting the Black community and the Hispanic community. Is that correct?
Yeah, let's go back 100 years. How about that? How about we go back before Roe versus Wade, and let's look at Margaret Sanger. Let's look at the founder of Planned Parenthood and what her mission, her goals, and her objectives were. We know for sure that one of her objectives was to annihilate the Negro population. They were considered human weeds that were to be annihilated. Now, this is her sentiment. Now, there are some people who would say, well, we have this wonderful organization that's here to help women. And, whatever our founder may have said, we have veered away from that. And now we are helping women. Well, to me, I think it's a little bit concerning that, yeah, that was her mission then, 100 years ago, nearly. That was her mission. But if you look at the results, they are carrying it out today. I mean, you have 79% of Planned Parenthood clinics located in what would be considered Black and brown neighborhoods. What does that mean? That means that when you look at the total number of Planned Parenthood clinics, you have them strategically placed in the areas where the weeds grow highest. And so now Planned Parenthood is still carrying out its mission to destroy Black people and brown people. In Hispanic neighborhoods, 62% of the Planned Parenthood clinics are in a 2-mile walking distance, so that you have quick access to murdering your baby. Now, if you couple that with the mission at the founding of Planned Parenthood to the results that they're getting today, the mission has not changed. In fact, the results bear out that, yeah, they've been quite effective in annihilating or snuffing out the human weeds that were considered the Negro population.
As a Black female, how do you feel about that?
Well, it angers me. Perry, can I, okay, let's talk about it for a second here, because we've got all of this, this sort of hoopla that surrounds the Black Lives Matter movement, which that's a talk for another day, that it's so biblically incompatible. But I just want to look at the hypocrisy there. So this is the notion that's being presented, that Black people, now listen, Black people are systematically being targeted to destroy them. We are so outraged that we are going to block traffic. We are going to stop the sales of goods in malls. We are going to keep marching. We are going to disrupt rallies. We are going to keep making a stink until we are recognized, because Black people are unjustly being targeted and murdered in this country. However, when you talk about the pro-life movement, this is a movement that would be incompatible with Black Lives Matter objectives. Like, there is a disconnect. And I think that people should just be outraged when you say you're looking at this issue, but you're ignoring this issue. If Black lives matter, right, they should matter in utero. And if you have an organization that is systematically targeting these Black babies, you look at New York City. One of the latest statistics to come out of New York City showed that more Black babies were aborted than were born. Now, when you initially hear that stat, you think, okay, so not a lot of Black people conceiving, but you would be wrong. The stat says that more Black babies were aborted than were born. That means they were conceived, and if the baby was not alive, it wouldn't be considered an abortion. But rather than given the opportunity to live, more Black babies were aborted than were born. Why aren't people marching? Why isn't there an outrage? Because what we have in our country really is a selective outrage.
Well, very well said, because the hypocrisy of the left is it allows for the Black Lives Matter movement to gain steam and speed, and yet Black babies dying in the utero aren't even recognized. So the hypocrisy is there, which is an amazement to me. Why not all, but a good portion of black pastors are Democrats. Can you explain that for me?
I don't know. You know, I wish I had the answer. There are men of God who love the Lord dearly, but are wrong on this issue. They are wrong, and they will be judged because of that. There's no other way to get around it. You know, and sometimes it's toughest to see the plank in our own eye. You know, it's easier for us to point out inconsistencies and hypocrisies among other people. But when it comes to us, we don't really see it. We don't want to deal with it. These same pastors who would be, you know, registered Democrats and who would say that the Democrat Party has touted the issues and the concerns of the black community would be the same ones who would decry slavery. And they would say, well, I don't know how you could be a pastor and be for slavery in the South. I don't know. I just don't get it. Well, I would say the same thing to you. How can you be a pastor and align yourself with a party that even a part of its platform, now they call it reproductive rights for women, but whatever you call it, what we're talking about is the destruction of innocent life. It just goes to show that we have these glaring issues that no one's willing to deal with. I don't know how you square your belief that women should have the right to choose to murder their babies with your conviction and your belief that children, babies, are fearfully and wonderfully made and are given to us on purpose by God. I don't know how you square that, but you have a lot of people who are trying to.
Well, I want to say thank you for saying that. I know that went right to your heart, but I needed to hear that because I wrestle with that. I'm trying to figure out how they can so passionately preach the cross, and when it comes to this issue, totally avoid it. And I'm having a hard time with that.
You know something, I'm going to say this in a very vulnerable moment here. You know, when there is a culture, and I'm talking specifically about the black community, when there is a culture and a history of poverty, the fact of the matter is that children are not seen as a gift or a blessing. They really are seen as a burden. I believe that there are many pastors who don't even realize this themselves, but they have subscribed to that belief. And I believe that there are a lot of pastors, if you press them, and they may not have had this moment where they have wrestled and really come to terms with this, where the Holy Spirit has searched them and brought these things to the surface. But I would say that many of these pastors probably believe that it is better for a child to be murdered than to grow up in an uncertain environment. One of the things that we challenge when we talk about this type of thinking is that you have got to view the world biblically. If we get back to filtering our beliefs and our convictions through the lens of Scripture, we will realize that children are a blessing, that the fruit of the womb is a reward. As it is, though, our families are in disarray. They're overwhelmingly headed by single black women. And so children don't have a fighting chance. And a lot of people, whether they want to admit it or not, believe that these kids are better off being murdered and picked apart and then having their body parts trafficked, right, than they are born into certain situations that they would classify as, you know, underprivileged. These things do not square with the word. If we return to the authority of the word, a lot of the things that need to be shaved off, a lot of our personal experiences, that is, will be shaved off.
Well, it comes back to whether or not the church is going to pick up this issue full force. We've allowed it to be politicized, which is a shame. But I truly believe that America's future rests upon the church taking back the life issue. And I realize the homosexual issue kind of ties into this a little bit. But the real thing to me is the sanctity of human life. And whether it's a single mom having a child out of wedlock, that's not the issue, because the church then has an obligation to come around them and support them and help them.
That's right.
But the problem that I'm having is that pastors just will not address this issue, whether it's black, white, or Hispanic or indifferent. They just don't deal with this issue. and and I wonder if they're being complicit to the crime by being silent.
I think yes. I think the answer is overwhelmingly yes. Listen, if you talk to any Christian, they would probably say, black, white, or otherwise, they would probably say that they're pro-life. But if you examine them closely, they're really not. They have submitted to the world standard of your, 1.2 children and, oh, Lord, you're having 3, you have 4, you must be out of your mind. 5, you're the Duggars. Our church culture really is not as pro-life as we like to imagine. We think that we're pro-life because we're anti-murder. But if we really want to get a full scope, sort of a full panoramic of how we can be most effective, we would return 100% to being pro-life. That is to say that children are not a burden, that pastors will return to teaching that, the fruit of the womb is a blessing. Blessed is the man whose quiver is full of kids. Now, I'm not saying that, everyone has to have 17 kids, but I think if we really want to start tackling this head on, then we would return overall to a pro-life attitude toward children, which shows them as the blessing that they are, that they're not a burden, that they're not an accident to be managed, but that they are a gift to us from the Lord.
Well, thank you, Nikki, for your tenacity and your vulnerability. We love you and appreciate you much. And I want to say to our viewers and listeners, go to afa.net. It's an incredible organization, American Family Association, in particular the Urban Family Talk. That's what Meeke heads up. And when you're there, support them, but look at all the resources that are there. I would hope that, Meeke, as we head into this crunch time now for some of these primaries that are in front of us, you know what I'm not hearing? I'm not hearing anything about the life issue. I'm not hearing anything about spiritual qualification or biblical worldview. And yet we're all gravitating towards somebody that has a bigger stick than the other guy. What are we doing to ourselves?
Oh man, we don't have enough time. We are in trouble. We need prayerful people to be a part of the political process. And I want to say to my evangelical brothers and sisters listening, you cannot be duped. You have got to be prayerful. And listen, if you care about character, you've got to care about character, even in the person who's speaking loudly in your direction. Just because things seem to be going the way you think they should go, if you indict someone based on a lack of character, then you've got to apply those same standards across the board. Unfortunately, Perry, what we're looking at today is a failure, especially by evangelicals, to do this. And it's frightening.
Yeah, it is. All right. Thank you so much. We look forward to having you back often. All right, by the way, you're going to be at the NRB?
Yes, I will. I'll see you there, Perry.
All right, I'm buying you a coffee or whatever you have.
I love coffee.
All right. Thanks, Meeke. See you next time.
God bless you.
You too. All right, we'll be right back.